Hello and welcome to Elevate Your Wealth. We're so happy to have you today. I'm Casey Elkins, Managing Partner of Elevated Financial Management, joined as always with Mark Stimpson, my friend, father-in-law, and business partner. How you doing, Mark?
I am so good today, Case. I am really excited, as we are every week when we are able to do this show, right? But today's episode, I think the viewers that have tuned in are going to be pretty excited about some of the things that we're going to share with them in this show today. So stay tuned, because I think it's going to be well worth your time.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. You know, we're talking about the 5 retirement blunders that even savvy investors make, and these are ones that we see quite frequently. And this is something that really can have such a negative impact on people's retirements. And you know, people think they're making the right decision. Honestly, they're doing the best that they can, but sometimes without that outside input, we tend to go down the wrong road, right? Because what do they always say? You don't know what you don't know. And we see that quite a bit. And so our very first one for today is drawing on retirement savings early, and how that can have such a detriment over the course of somebody's retirement. What do you have to say about that, Mark?
Yeah, this is one that frequently doesn't get enough discussion about. We really try to educate every client that we talk with about this, because I think all of us would agree life changes and things happen to us, right? Especially unexpected things, in the financial world. But drawing on our retirement accounts early because we might feel like we're in a pinch can really have long-term effects that I don't think a lot of people think about. One of the big ones is if you're drawing on those accounts before you're 59 and a half, you're not only taking the money out, but you're going to be looking at a 10% penalty on top of that, right? Plus, it's going to add to your tax liability, right? Depending on how much you make, maybe the rest of the year, taking out a big chunk because you feel, oh, I got to go buy that car right now, may not be the greatest decision. And one of the things that I like to share with our viewers is that there's so much more involved than just taking the money out of the account. Because when you do that, you're going to use that money for whatever you feel you need to do that for, right? But the long-term effect is much more than that. The money comes out. But then what about the growth on those funds over time? That money could have been left in, let's say, the market. You could have had it invested, wisely. You lose all of that opportunity when you go in and you draw that money out, maybe when you really didn't have to, because there's such a tremendous difference between a need and a want. Right.
That's that compound interest, right?
Yeah,
you're missing out on years of compound interest. That's a major detriment.
And when we talk about that, it does matter, right? Because now you're using money to maybe take care of a want, not a need. And there may be a lot better ways to come up with that money than raiding these qualified accounts. Because if you cannibalize them early, when we're needing future income, possibly for 20 or 30 years, it can devastate your long-term income planning. And that's why we just want our clients to feel good about the decisions that they make and understand the ramifications if they do go into those accounts early.
Right, and taking those funds out early, I mean, realistically, it's more than just taking current savings out. As you mentioned, it's that growth that's really a problem. And what we're really doing, I mean, if we can kind of frame it in a very specific way, is we're robbing ourselves, our future selves, to help our current selves, right?
That's exactly what's happening.
And if we're not doing it in the right way, that really, we're going to pay the price at some point, right? Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, if we are structuring things the right way, if we're paying attention to how things are set up, and that's part of the plan, if our plan works to take some money up front, then that can be okay, right? But we have to know the long-term effect that that's going to have on folks, and something that we really need to pay attention to. Something else that we really see quite a bit of is couples not discussing between themselves their expectations for retirement, their goals, the timing of things, just really kind of not having that conversation. And what a massive problem that really causes for retirement, because people can have 2 totally different views, and we see it in our office all the time, right? People come in and it's almost like they've never talked about it, and we're not pointing the finger at anybody, but that can definitely cause a problem. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is an issue that doesn't get talked about usually in the big box store world. They just care about what's happening to the money, how can they grow it, leave it in, you'll be guaranteed to 8-10% if you do that. But where is the emotional help? And when you do not discuss your retirement expectations and goals with either your spouse or your partner, it can have a detrimental effect that really can cause problems throughout one's retirement life, right? We want our clients to talk about these things. I think I've shared in other episodes before where we'll talk about something and the wife will look at the husband or vice versa, and they look at each other and go, I didn't know that's how you felt, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a problem because your goals and dreams might be totally different than your spouse's, right? How are you going to spend your time, right? If the wife is going to continue to work and you want to ride off into the sunset, that might be an issue that your wife could have a problem with because you don't figure out, how you're going to spend your time. When are you going to make time for each other, right? So some of these things are really, really important. Maybe what hobby do you want to get involved with, right? These are all the types of things on an emotional level that don't get discussed. And we believe they could literally blow up a great plan because you've never discussed this. Maybe the wife wants to travel and see the world, but you'd rather get in an RV and go see the Grand Canyon or drive down to see the grandkids. Yeah. And so the wife's expectations are yours are like roads that go like this, right? And we see this. We talk about this a lot with our different clients that come see us. So we want everybody to be on the same page, and you've got to be willing to sit down and talk about some of these issues to get on the same page, because if you don't, what we will promise is it's going to rear its ugly head down the road, and it could lead to a lot of heartache and discouragement because you're just not planning together. You're headed down two completely different paths.
Yeah, that's it. Heading down two different paths, and marriage is ultimately about compromise, right? I know we have a lot more to talk about that, but we do have a special offer for our folks at home, and so we want to make sure that we get that out to you. For our first 5 callers that are willing to pick up the phone and give us a shout, we're offering a completely written financial plan put together by our team of certified financial planners. Now, this includes a risk analysis. So what type of risk are you taking? What kind of taxes are you going to be paying in retirement? What type of income are you going to have set up for retirement? And can you retire early? Can you take funds out of your accounts right now? How is that going to have an impact over the course of the next 20 or 30 years of your life? And so all these things we'll discuss and so much more. Please pick up the phone. It's 100% complimentary, no obligation. The phone number is 844-342-7142. The number's right there on the screen. There's a QR code. We're making it as easy as we can for you. When we come back from our break, we're going to talk more about drawing on accounts early, blunders, mistakes that people are making in retirement, very specifically Social Security mistakes that are made. Don't change a dial. Come right back to Elevate Your Wealth.
Call 844-342-7142 right now for your own written financial plan. Having a clear path to retirement is more than just your savings. This review will include a complete risk analysis on your portfolio, a deep dive fee X-ray to determine how much you are and could be paying on those investments, a tax reduction report, and healthcare and legacy planning for you and your estate. To begin your retirement readiness review, call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your appointment right away. Whether your retirement is coming soon or you want to be certain you can stay retired, the written financial plan will help guide you through your retirement planning journey. Call Mark, Casey, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your meeting today.
Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. Again, we're talking about the mistakes, the blunders that we see people making as they approach retirement. We've discussed drawing on accounts too early, making sure that we're discussing with our partner properly about what we want to do in retirement. And honestly, Mark, I mean, this is a big one, right? Because so commonly we see that people are working together, right, in their lives, couples are, but that doesn't mean that their goals always necessarily align. And I have a very specific client in mind that this was the case where the wife was very much looking forward to traveling the world together in retirement, had these big plans. The husband does not like to travel. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't even want to go anywhere locally, right? And so, like you mentioned, it's two roads kind of diverging or separating from one another, and that we don't want that with our marriage mate. And so it's about compromise, right? It's about working through those things together, having the right conversation. So when we think about that being such an issue, what can folks do to potentially solve that, or at least help ease the tension surrounding those different goals?
Yeah, so the way we frame those different expectations is critical because, and somebody might ask, well, why is that important? It matters because you're going to need to frame your budget and your accounts to fund, especially if you're talking maybe some expensive things that you want to do early on. Because we share with our clients all the time that there's the go-go years, there's the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right? So we want our clients to have more income and more money at the beginning, right? Because you're going to have the health that's going to allow you to do some of the things that you dreamed and worked your whole life to do. But you need a plan, right? If you start, maybe the husband has retired but you haven't, well, what's going to happen if he starts drawing on some of these qualified accounts, this IRA account? It's going to add income then, right? Provisional income, which could then cause a problem with how much of his Social Security gets taxed. See, and we don't think about these things maybe as much as we should. And that's why a written plan is really going to help solve so many of these different issues that are going to come up and hopefully keep, arguments to a minimum or disagreements to the minimum because we didn't discuss the things that we probably should have ahead of time.
That makes me think of another example. Fairly recently, a client came into the office and she came alone and didn't bring her husband in, which, sometimes that's the case, but usually we encourage folks to come in as a couple. And she shared with me that her husband had retired 5 years prior to her and had actually spent his entire 401k in just a 5-year time frame. And realistically, that has a negative impact on him, that has a negative impact on her, and for the rest of their lives together. And this is really where it boils down to. They didn't have a conversation, they didn't have a plan, they didn't take the time to figure out where the other person was at, right? And build something together. And that's what all of this is about. You've been saving this money for years, and you want to make sure that you use it as efficiently as you can and that you're working with your spouse, right? And that requires a conversation, and sometimes there's lots of emotions that come up in those conversations, right? And so sometimes we're the referee or maybe we're like the marriage therapist sometimes in our office, right? But these are all things that need to be worked out so that we can have a successful retirement together. Now, here's the third one that we're talking about today, which is issues with Social Security, right? Not claiming Social Security at the right time, not walking through a careful plan as far as Social Security goes to make sure that we're maximizing it. And again, just getting the best benefit from it that we can. I mean, you've been paying into this for years. You want to make sure that you get all that you can out of it, right? But it also factors in with the rest of the plan, right? How does it all work together? What do you think about all that, Mark?
I'm a nationally certified Social Security advisor, and I really pride myself, and our office does, of making sure that our clients maximize Social Security. There's a lot of benefits that can be missed if you don't understand and have a good education on Social Security. A lot of clients today are claiming early. Well, they don't understand some of the long-term ramifications that that's going to have on the retirement budget. We don't want to see a client get reduced 25 to 30% because they started at 62 and they didn't really have to. Now, if they have to draw, we understand if you have to draw at 62 because you've got to pay your bills, that's totally different. We understand that. But a lot of people are drawing at 62 and they don't really need to. They maybe are still working a little bit, or maybe they're working full time. They don't understand how the earned income test, which is something that a lot of clients don't realize is going to adversely affect them to where they could lose up to 50% of their Social Security that year because they make money, so many dollars over $21,240. For every $2 they make over that, they got to pay back $1 of their Social Security.
That's huge.
That is a 50% penalty. Now, I think most of us would agree that's a number that I know I don't want. I'm not giving that up on my Social Security. You shouldn't either unless you absolutely have to. So again, we talk about this. We need a plan, right? If you wait till 70, it's going to really help your spouse if you pass away because the survivor benefit is based on the age that the spouse waited to start drawing on. So if the husband waits till 70, he passes away at 72, let's say, the wife is going to get a spousal boost up to the 70 number, which could be dramatically higher than her own benefit,
Right.
which is going to help to offset some of what we call the widow's benefit, that's, or not benefit, but the widow's penalty that's going to be implied, because once Social Security goes away, just because she gets raised up to the husband's, she still lost, you know, a whole Social Security benefit, right? Same way if you don't make the right call when it comes to your pension. If you take a survivor, or what we call a life-only pension, and you die early, the wife may end up not getting a dime of that pension. How devastating could that be if you were counting on, you'd been spending an extra $3,000 a month, and now the $3,000 goes away? How are you going to replace that income? So again, this is where a plan, where we take those scenarios into account and we plan for them so that we can replace that needed income when it becomes crucial, and the unexpected things happen in life.
And as you mentioned, the widow's penalty, right? I mean, realistically, you know, she may get that, or the spouse may get that boost, but their Social Security is still going to disappear, right? The lower one will. But it's not like their expenses have been cut in half. It may be less to some extent, but it very well may stay about the same, because your standard of living hasn't changed. Yes, there is not as many mouths to feed and things of that nature.
Inflation.
But you know, your life is going to continue on at some point, right? You'll grieve, but you'll continue on, and that's really the key. Is we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, making the right decision, so that we don't have a unintentional adverse effect on our spouse or on those that we leave behind, because that's just something that weighs on everybody thinking about that. But it's something that happens a lot because this conversation isn't had, right? And lots of times people get the advice at the water cooler and they're told 62 is the right time to do it, and that very well may not be the circumstance, right? So we have to be strategic in how we set things up. Now, Mark, we've got a couple more to talk about when we come back, but we have a special offer for the folks at home. You want to tell them what that is?
Yeah. For the next 5 callers that pick up the phone, we care about your retirement. So we want to have a conversation. You have worked so hard to build up your little nest egg, and we want you to know you're never going to feel pressure. We want you to come into our office. Let's just have a conversation about your specific situation. You can leave your checkbook at home, and if you pick up the phone and dial 844-342-7142, we're going to develop a written plan based on your needs and concerns. That's all it's going to be based on, and it's going to be done by a team of certified financial planners. We're going to look at income. We're going to look at the tax liability and the tax strategies that you may or may not need. We're going to look at making sure your income is guaranteed. We're also going to look at medical issues. How am I going to handle those, or many long-term care concerns may have. So please pick up the phone and call 844-342-7142. If you've saved at least $250,000 or more, call 844-342-7142.
Thank you very much, Mark. Again, for those listening at home, this is a complimentary, no obligation written financial plan put together by our team of certified financial planners. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone, call the number on the screen, scan the QR code, come in and see us. We'll have an honest conversation and figure out what we can do to help you improve. We've got 2 more retirement blunders to discuss when we come back. Don't change the dial. Come right back to Elevate Your Wealth.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. Again, I'm Casey Elkins here with always Mark Stimpson, my partner, my friend, and my father-in-law. We're talking about the 5 retirement blunders, or the blunders that people make in retirement, moving towards retirement. And a lot of times we see these even with savvy investors, even folks that have done a nice job on their own. simply because there's lots of things to uncover when it comes to retirement. So many decisions to make, so much going on, and if these aren't decisions you've had to make before and you're not well versed in all those choices, these things can happen to you too. And so we want to bring this to you today to make sure that we can address those for you. The next one on our list is actually something very interesting, and it's thinking, many people think that staying with their investor or with their investment advisor that they've been with for the last 10, 15, 20 years, helping them build their nest egg, is the same person that should be helping them as they start to spend those money, spend those dollars in retirement. And, you know, realistically, they may have done a very good job.
Right.
They may have really helped folks build and create something great. And that's a good thing, right? Hats off to those guys that do that, right? But ultimately, as we mentioned, there's so much more to it in retirement that we want to make sure that we're now that our life is shifting, now that our life is adjusting and we're moving to a different phase, potentially that requires somebody else to help us down that new path. What would you add to that, Mark?
Yeah, that is absolutely 100% correct, Casey. We find this all the time because one of the hardest things that we have to deal with is helping our clients possibly break or end a relationship with an advisor that is maybe a friend. It could be a family member. But you mentioned it. There is a tremendous difference between the advisor that took us up the mountain versus the one that's taking us down the mountain. And one of the biggest issues is most financial advisors that deal with the accumulation phase, they don't want to deal with taxes.
Right.
And we believe if you don't have a tax plan, that's a tremendous mistake. You will regret that in the long run, right? Taxes and inflation are going to be the biggest eroder of our money. So you need to find a specialist that's going to help you to come down the mountain because they're going to deal with strategies that your planner probably has never even talked to you about. And it truly is a disservice. It didn't mean that they didn't do a really good job for you, but it just takes a different skill set. And it has nothing to do with them not doing their job. But as retirement planners and specialists on the downward motion, when we got to take into account taxes, risk. Now, the advisor on the accumulation side just talked about risk, but they take usually a different approach to it than we would, right? And we really want to protect our clients on the downside. The accumulation advisor's got those assets, and he knows the market goes up and down, but it can be devastating to you as a retiree to lose a big chunk of money. Last year, close to 23% of qualified accounts were lost, gone. You may not have the time to recover from that. So having a specialist that can help us with tax planning, the medical part, right? Medicare supplement, Medicare Advantage, you know, possibly Medicaid issues that come into play. Then what about the estate piece? We're going to talk about that in a minute. See, these are pieces that the accumulation advisor does not usually deal with. So we highly recommend that you find somebody that you trust and is going to help you come down the mountain, which is going to create and put more money in your pocket in the long run if you deal with someone that's really good in that world.
Right, and I mean, it makes sense, right? If you take a second to stop and think about it, it does make sense simply from the standpoint that if we rewind and you think about 10, 15 years ago, you weren't worried about the taxes that were going to hit your retirement. You weren't worried about the inflation that's going to hit your retirement. You weren't worried about Medicare and long-term care and all these things. But RMDs, right? And all of these things have now come to the forefront. I mean, they're right here. They're top of mind, and we have to deal with them. And if that's the case, if that advisor is kind of a single-faceted advisor, meaning they manage the investments, and undoubtedly they do it very well, but there's so much more now to deal with, we need to make sure that we're working with the right person that can help us with all those things. Now, unfortunately, because of time, we do have to move to our next one. So our fifth blunder is not having a survivorship plan in place. Why is that such a concern, Mark?
Yeah, this is one, I think about this because I just want our viewing audience to know, Casey is my survivorship plan. He's my succession plan, right? We all need that. I have a business owner that called me, and he's so discouraged, actually, because he has no one to turn his business over to. None of his family works with him in the business. He does have a brother, but they're both almost the same age. So, you know, you can't count on if you're the same age, you know, life expectancy is probably going to be pretty close with both brothers, right? So do you have a plan to deal with when things are pretty much over, right? How are those important assets, businesses, how are they going to be passed on? Or do you want to completely shut them down and just sell your business, right? Which is going to bring into play taxes that you may or may not know are going to really come, and like you said, they're going to be right there, and you may have had no idea how extensive they could be, right? That's why we have to have a plan. Do you have a will or a trust? We're big believers in our office of trust. We don't want our clients to have to go through probate unless they really want to. And I'll tell you, anybody that says they want to go through probate, I would question that very much, because anybody that's gone through it would tell you, I wish this would have never happened to me, right?
Absolutely.
And in our state, Washington, you're probably looking at close to anywhere from 6 to 12 months to go through just an average probate situation. So why not eliminate that with a trust?
Right, and we talked earlier about the widow's penalty, and ultimately that's what a survivorship plan is going to help with, right?
Exactly.
If we have one spouse, undoubtedly, usually one spouse predeceases the other, well, in that circumstance, is there going to be enough income from the other accounts to make up for the Social Security that's lost,
right,
to make up for the pension that's lost? Have burial expenses and things like that been addressed? Funeral expenses, is that going to be taken care of, or is that all just on us to figure out at the time when we're grieving the most, when our emotional distress is at its highest point? We want to make sure that we have a plan surrounding that. So, Mark, again, we have a special offer for the folks at home. Would you share with them what that is?
Yeah, for our next 5 callers, if you've saved at least $250,000 or more, maybe you work at Boeing or Weyerhaeuser, any of the companies in the Seattle area, but you have concerns, any of the things we've talked about today, you've thought about these things, you're a little bit anxious about them, please pick up the phone and call 844-342-7142. If you do that, we're going to develop a written plan for you specifically that's going to take your concerns and cares into consideration. It's going to be done by a team of certified financial planners. So please pick up the phone, call 844-342-7142. Let us have a conversation. Leave your checkbook at home, but just know we're going to develop a written plan that's going to give you the confidence, the clarity, and the independence to have and live the type of retirement that you've dreamed about your whole life.
Thank you very much, Mark. Again, for those folks listening at home, we're talking about those 5 retirement blunders. These are things that we see every day in our office. We don't want them to happen to you. We don't want them to happen to anybody. If you don't want them to happen to yourself, pick up the phone. Give us a call. We make it as easy as can be. We just want to have a simple conversation with you, see how we can help, make sure that you're not filing Social Security too early or drawing on those accounts, anything that could have a negative impact. We're looking forward to seeing you again next week right here on Elevate Your Wealth.